Shippers are being forced to consider other alternatives to heavy diesel oil, and liquid natural gas is proving to be a tempting alternative for ships which operate a large percentage of the time inside emission control areas. Until fairly recently, it has been a chicken and egg problem. Will ports build the infrastructure, such as storage tanks and pipelines, to support the fuel, or will ship owners build LNG-capable vessels? Ports are starting to support the bunker industry, and confident ship owners are now ordering new vessels. The order book shows dual fuel and pure gas fuel ships are being ordered, and most recently the United Arab Shipping Company ordered container ships that will be able to operate on LNG. The owner will need to add gas tanks for LNG, but the gas piping and engines that can use the two fuels will have been installed during the construction of the vessel. Shipping emissions are under scrutiny, and increased regulations are coming into force. The IMO's MARPOL Annex 6 Regulation 14 has set out a timeline for reduction of emissions. From the 1st of January 2015, ships operating within emission control areas will need to restrict their sulphur emissions in their exhaust to 0.1%. From 2020 or possibly 2025, depending on the outcome of a review of low sulphur bunker supplies, the IMO has mandated that worldwide shipping emissions outside emission control areas must be at or below 0.5%. This regulation affects emission control areas in North America and North Europe, but more emission control areas could be created. In any case, by 2020, vessels will be required to burn fuel with less than 0.5% outside an emissions control area. Worldwide, high sulphur fuel, known as heavy fuel oil, has an average sulphur content of about 2.7%. The maximum allowed is 3.5%. LNG has virtually no sulphur content. LNG produces 80% less NOx, 30% less CO2 and 90% fewer particulates than heavy fuel oil. There are other ways to reduce emissions from ships apart from buying marine gas oil and diesel oil, which is expensive. Under Regulation 4 of Annex 6, equivalent measures can be used, such as water washing the exhaust, commonly known as scrubbers. There is also research being carried out on other potential bunker options, including biofuels, methanol and glycerol, but currently LNG appears to be gaining the most momentum at this time. It is also possible to reduce the sulphur content in heavy fuel oil. Steps are being made on both sides though. According to IHS Maritime's database, there are 53 vessels whose primary fuel is LNG. These are mainly limited to barges and vessels on regular services, such as ferries in North Europe and countries such as Finland and Sweden. These are mainly limited to barges and vessels on regular services, such as ferries in North Europe, in countries such as Finland and Sweden. IHS Maritime data also suggests that a further 11 are LNG tankers who run on gas boil-off. But an LNG fuel tug has recently been launched. A cargo ship is operating around the Norwegian coast. On the 24th of February, steel was cut for the first of 2 Marlin-class 3,000 TEU LNG-powered container ships at General Dynamics NASSCO shipyard in San Diego, USA, for shipping company Tote. Both are due to be operational by 2016. With regards to bunkers, there are only a handful of LNG bunkering facilities available, and those that exist are on a moderate and localised scale. About 8 more facilities are being developed. One key player due to enter the market later this year, in 2014, is Singapore. This strategic location could further boost the take-up of LNG-fuelled vessels. There are schemes to encourage ports to put in place LNG bunker facilities. In Europe, the European Commission has started to identify opportunities to boost LNG fuel take-up. It unveiled the Clean Power for Transport package presented to the European Commission in January 2013. The European Commission is offering subsidies through the Trans-European Transport Networks, or TEN-T project. The ports of Gothenburg and Rotterdam look set to benefit from funding. A new storage facility is being developed at Rotterdam that will feed satellite or smaller terminals. It will work in collaboration with Gothenburg and aims to start offering LNG bunkers in 2015. Port of Antwerp is also a contender for an EC subsidy for a facility that will mainly be used to extend the LNG bunkering facilities it offers to barges. And the EU, also through its TEN-T programme, is giving over €1 million to co-fund some studies to develop an LNG bunkering infrastructure project along the Spanish Mediterranean coast. The International Association of Ports and Harbours is also encouraging ports to consider whether or not LNG bunkers is something it can offer the industry. Through its World Ports Climate Initiative, it has set up an LNG fuel project group, and Port of Antwerp is a leading voice within this group. There are 3 different ways to bunker LNG: ship-to-ship at anchorage at sea or alongside, by ship when the ship is alongside, by truck when the ship is alongside, or alongside at a shoreside refuelling terminal. IHS Maritime is currently carrying out a study that so far suggests that LNG bunkering facilities will be developed in ports which are close to current LNG terminal infrastructure. And the fuel is less likely to be used on vessels such as bulkers and tankers on the spot market, but for vessels on planned routes such as container ships. IHS's Crispin Atkinson believes that one example of how the LNG bunker infrastructure could develop would be that a ship refuels in China, tops up in Singapore at a bunker hub, and again in the Persian Gulf, and then on to Europe. Not all of these ports may have the relevant infrastructure, but the vessels could be served by bunker tanker. There are already examples of bunker tankers filling up in one port and then supplying ships in another location, and so this could be the way in which the LNG bunker network is built up. An example of this would be Zeebrugge, where LNG supply tankers could load and then go off and bunker container ships in Le Havre, Antwerp, Dunkirk, Felixstowe and so on, all within a day's steaming for the ship. From an environmental standpoint, it's easy to see the benefits of how LNG can help shipping companies cut their SOx emissions, but it does also present some challenges. It has a low energy density and so takes up more space than conventional bunkers such as heavy fuel oil. And so it requires bigger tanks on board ship. As there is more volume, it also takes longer to take on bulkers, particularly from road tankers. LNG has been carried as a cargo for about 50 years with very few accidents and no serious ones. And so if handled correctly, its safety credentials are proven, but worldwide implementation will require the uptake of IMO's International Code for Gas-Fueled Ships, which is now overdue. It's also worth remembering that many of the vessels afloat that can be fuelled by LNG are dual fuel, and so have the option to be run on diesel fuel or heavy fuel oil as well. Over the past 18 months, there has been a lot of talk about using LNG as a fuel, and investments for both shipping companies and ports suggest there is a considerable amount of interest in its future. It does offer reduced sulphur emissions, which the shipping industry needs to meet IMO regulations for operation within emissions control areas. Unless there is a new fuel around the corner, then it seems a strong contender. However, IHS Maritime expects that diesel or other fuels with a sulphur content of 0.1 to 0.5% will become available eventually. It would have to be heavily refined though, and this would have cost implications. Either way, the clock is ticking to the 1st of January deadline in 2015.